The struggle to survive in the aftermath of the earthquake. As the dead are buried in Turkey, people who lost their homes are living in terrible conditions in freezing temperatures.
Despite the best efforts of aid workers, there are not enough tents and there are not enough toilets. So the next threat for those who have survived the earthquake comes from being crammed in to unsanitary conditions.
Also tonight, 2 teenagers are arrested on suspicion of the murder of a 16-year-old girl in Warrington. Pressure grows on the BBC chairman after his conduct is criticised by MPs. And Manchester City beat Aston Villa and closed the gap at the top of the Premier League.
This is ITV News with Geraint Vincent.
Good evening. Almost exactly 1 week since an earthquake struck Turkey and Syria, more than 33,000 people have now been confirmed dead. The task of burying the victims of the disaster is a difficult and urgent one, and bulldozers are being used to dig graves. Meanwhile, more than 100 arrest warrants have been issued for contractors suspected of being involved in the construction of buildings which collapsed too easily. Peter Smith reports from Turkey.
The dead are buried to the sounds of prayer and heavy machinery. With more than 30,000 confirmed dead in Turkey and Syria, funerals are now on an industrial scale. There is no time for headstones here. No sooner is one person in the ground, they go to get the next. The smell of death is everywhere. The scale simply horrifying. While Turkey deals with its dead, it's also trying to cope with the living. The earthquake hit an area almost as big as Great Britain, affecting 13.5 million people. Makeshift camps are being hastily constructed, but entire cities have been made homeless. This city of Iskenderun had a population of 2.5 million. The camp for those who've lost their homes, when it is finished, will only have capacity for 3,500. This is the challenge across southeast Turkey now. Despite the best efforts of aid workers, there are not enough tents and there are not enough toilets. So the next threat for those who have survived the earthquake comes from being crammed in to unsanitary conditions. We're invited to see inside one of the tents. For 7 people. We don't have anywhere to wash, the woman tells me. This place is not hygienic. Those who don't even have a tent must find their own shelter for bitterly cold nights. 4 children sleep in this lorry cabin.
We need a home to live in. Even a shipping container would do. And all the children here need clothes.
Rescuers still search for survivors here, but now begins the search for blame. Dozens of building contractors from this region have been detained, suspected of cutting corners with devastating consequences. A natural disaster, but Turkey wants to know if it was made worse by the hand of man. Peter Smith, ITV News, Iskenderun.
And the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal has raised more than £60 million for the charity effort to help survivors of the earthquake. The money will go towards medical treatment for the injured, food and clean water and shelter for those who have lost everything. The DEC is made up of 14 British charities, all of which are helping the people affected by the disaster. In the last hour, 2 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the murder of a 16-year-old girl in Cheshire. The body of Brianna Jai was found in a park in Warrington yesterday afternoon. A 15-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl are in custody. Sam Holder reports.
She was just 16 years old. Brianna Jai found dead in a park in Warrington with multiple stab wounds. Brianna was discovered by members of the public on a path in Colchester yesterday afternoon. Cheshire Police described it as a truly awful attack and say they are treating her death as murder.
Brianna was a much-loved 16-year-old girl. and obviously a family are just devastated at a loss at this time. It's really understandable that people will be concerned by this. What I would say to people is please don't be afraid. We've got extra officers in the area. You'll see an increased police presence, and we're working tirelessly to bring those responsible to justice.
Officers also want to speak to anyone else who was in the park at the time and any homes or businesses with CCTV as they try to piece together what led to this horror and understand what happened to 16-year-old Brianna Ghey. Sam Holder, ITV News.
The position of the chairman of the BBC is tonight looking increasingly precarious after MPs were scathing about his conduct. A cross-party committee criticised Richard Sharp for failing to declare his role in organising a loan for the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Mr Sharp later applied for the chairmanship without disclosing any details of the arrangement to MPs. Labour says it's difficult to see how he can stay in the job. Our political reporter Amy Lewis has more.
One was the Prime Minister looking for a loan. The other was the rich Tory party donor hoping to become chair of the BBC. Richard Sharp is accused of being the go-between when arranging the loan for Boris Johnson, who several months later backed his move to the broadcaster. But Mr Sharp didn't disclose the full facts to a committee overseeing his appointment, who claim he has shown significant errors of judgment.
The rules are very clear. If there's anything that potentially could embarrass the BBC or indeed any other employer for a public service job, you have to put it down on the form. He chose not to tell us, or indeed the interview panel, that he had facilitated an £800,000 loan to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister who then appointed him to the very top job at the BBC.
Due process was followed.
Mr Sharp's appointment was backed by the Culture, Media and Sport Committee 2 years ago. But this week, after the allegations emerged, they summoned the former banker back for a 2-hour grilling.
This clearly causes the BBC embarrassment. Why didn't you disclose it? Just to be clear, I didn't arrange the loan.
Labour say Mr Sharp's position is now untenable.
It's his job to uphold trust in the BBC and to uphold the independence of the BBC, and I think this report is just another reason why it's becoming increasingly difficult for him to do that job properly.
But one government minister told me it is up to the BBC to decide Mr Sharp's future.
Can we really believe that his job was given to him on merits?
Well, I think we have to wait for the result of the inquiry by the Public Appointments Commission. But once we've got that inquiry, we'll know everything will be on the table, and then judgments can be made.
Sir Craig Oliver was a senior BBC News executive and worked in Downing Street as a top Tory advisor.
I think that Richard Sharp can survive this, and the reason for that is I think that the government won't sack him, and then he's showing absolutely no sign that he was prepared to go of his own volition. So in the absence of somebody being able to sack him and him not willing to go on his own volition, I don't think he's going to go.
Richard Sharp denies giving Boris Johnson financial advice and has apologised to BBC staff for the distraction the allegations have caused. Allegations that are still the subject of 2 further investigations. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
The US military has shot down another unidentified object, this time over the state of Michigan. It's the 4th time it's happened in less than a fortnight. Last weekend, a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon was shot down by the Air Force off the coast of South Carolina. The pay dispute between ministers and the Royal College of Nursing in England may be about to intensify. Nurses who work on A&E, intensive care and cancer wards could be asked to join future walkouts. They have not been involved in any strikes so far. Well, Sejal Karia joins me now. Sejal, the union's raising the stakes, are they?
Yes, the aim is to put pressure on the government to break the deadlock over pay by ramping up the current dispute. That would involve more nurses who previously were exempt from strikes. So those that are in A&E, intensive care units and cancer wards would be asked to join picket lines. Plus, the strikes could last 48 hours straight, running continuously through 2 days and 2 nights rather than the 12-hour walkouts we've seen previously. Although staff would honour the legal obligation not to endanger life in an urgent clinical situation. But all of this, as you say, is designed to increase the impact of the strikes, thereby increasing the pressure on the government. The government isn't indicating that it's likely to give in at any moment and is urging the unions to call off the strike, saying it has tried and tested plans to minimise disruption. If the union decides to escalate action, then we could see it take place in the next 2 weeks.
OK, Sejal Karia, thank you. To sport, and in rugby's Six Nations, England have their first victory of the season after losing to Scotland in their opening match. They bounced back, scoring 5 tries in a comprehensive 31 points to 14 victory over Italy at Twickenham. It was their first win under the new coach, Steve Borthwick. In the Premier League, Manchester City got back to addressing affairs on the field after a troubled week off it. City moved to within striking distance of leaders Arsenal thanks to a 3-1 victory over Aston Villa. Chris Scudder was watching.
A difficult week at the Etihad, and boos rang out in response to the champions being charged with scores of alleged breaches of the Premier League's financial fair play rules. If the boss looked troubled at what the future might hold, the players appeared to come together. It didn't take long to break Villa's resistance. Rodri. City knew victory would take them to within 3 points of leaders Arsenal before they play them this week, and the game was as good as won when Gundogan made it 2-0.
Gundogan scores. The City do lead 2-0.
Some spectacular gymnastics from Jack Grealish against his old club earned City the chance for a third.
Martinez, who has some antics.
Riyad Mahrez made sure the game was all but over before half-time. With the job done, the champions' minds wandered enough for Villa to score a consolation goal from Ollie Watkins. City's chief executive, Ferran Soriano, could have been forgiven for having his mind on other things. But Pep Guardiola can only win the battles on the field. He'll know that if they beat Arsenal on Wednesday, they'll hit the top of the table again. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
And finally tonight, Olympic medalist Sky Brown struck gold at the World Championships today and has become Great Britain's first skateboarding world champion. The 14-year-old won the world title in the United Arab Emirates. The championships are the first qualifying event for the Paris Olympics next year. She was Team GB's youngest Olympic medal winner in history when she won bronze at the Tokyo 2020 Games. And well done to her. That's all from us tonight. So good night and thanks for watching.
This unexpected warm winter sun could disappear by lunchtime. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello and a very good evening to you. Hope you're all keeping well. So for many of us, it's been calm but rather cloudy across the UK throughout this weekend. But we are hopeful we'll get to see a bit more in the way of sunshine, certainly as we go through the next couple of days or so. And it will be feeling rather mild for the time of year too. However, heads up for the end of the week, we are expecting it to turn unsettled with some outbreaks of rain in places. Now, for the rest of tonight, it stays quiet out there. We've got some clear skies across some northern and western parts, and even by the end of the night across the southeast. So we may just see a few patches of frost, even a few pockets of fog in places. But for most of us, where we hold on to that cloud, temperatures there staying above 4 degrees. So for some, a bit of a grey start to the day first thing on Monday morning, but the signs are for plenty of sunshine to develop. Some of that cloud may linger across some eastern parts throughout the afternoon, but elsewhere it's fine and dry. Plenty of sunshine, and it will be feeling a little bit milder out there too. Bye-bye.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV London Weekend Weather.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. We're benefiting from some very mild January temperatures out there, and this time finally that stubborn cloud shifts. So to start the new working week, beautiful brightness out there, and actually it's only midweek and beyond when things then turn unsettled yet again. The high pressure is still very much in command, and tucking around from the south, we'll notice that airflow, of course, bringing the milder conditions. But through Wednesday, Thursday and beyond, we switch to an Atlantic flow, and it's this which in turn then brings a return of outbreaks of rain. For now, though, nestled under all of that cloud, and of course, thanks to that southerly airflow, it does mean our temperatures holding up. So hovering around the mid-single-figure mark for the most of us. Towards southern and eastern areas, already though, that cloud starts to peel away into the early hours of the morning. So temperatures may just dip that bit further here. And with the lighter winds, we could see a couple of pockets of mist and fog developing into Monday morning. Generally, though, it'll be tomorrow when the bulk of that cloud continues to clear for the rest of us. But by and large, it will be a much brighter and more pleasant day out there. So finally, a return of some sunshine, clear blue skies right the way through into the afternoon. A little bit more breezy, yes, but find some shelter and our temperatures get a real kick as well.
Plint sponsors ITV London Weekend Weather.